Elon Musk's AI chatbot, Grok, is coming under fire for generating sexualized deepfake images. Users are telling Grok to create the images, digitally stripping photos of women and girls down to barely their bikinis or lingerie. The pictures are then being publicly circulated on social media platform X. European lawmakers have been vocal in their criticism, demanding that XAI, the company behind Grok, take urgent action. The European Commission says it is investigating.
We are very well aware of the fact that X or Grok, or X for Grok, is now offering a spicy mode, showing explicit sexual content with some output generated with childlike images. This is not spicy, this is illegal, this is appalling, this is disgusting. This is how we see it. And this has no place in Europe.
And to talk about the growing problem of sexualized deep fakes, I'm joined now by Lindsay Gorman. She's managing director of the German Marshall Fund's technology program. Lindsay, it's good to have you back on the program. Grok, we understand, is being used to digitally undress women and children and show them in skimpy clothing. Do we know why isn't X stopping this?
Yeah, good to be back with you, even talking about what is, I think, a very disturbing and frankly disgusting development that really shows some of the negative effects that AI can have, even in a world where there is so much excitement about this technology. And I'll say a couple things. First, that this use case, and I hate to call it that, but it really is a use case of artificial intelligence and image generation in particular for sexualized content, often non-consensual, of women, and in the case of what we've seen reported now on Grok, also potentially minors, is unfortunately one of the most popular uses of deepfakes and has been for some time, creating deepfake pornography. And there actually has been quite a movement to spin up to try to address it. X itself and XAI itself has said that it takes this very seriously. But look, I think this is really an issue of not putting the right guardrails in place soon enough. This is not a problem that's unique to XAI, but what is unique, I think, is the extreme cuts to staff and engineers that are charged, that are part of XAI's safety team, that actually develop some of the guardrails for removing this content, preventing it from becoming rampant on the platform in the first place. And that's why we're actually seeing deeper looks into how we can better put these guardrails up.
And as you say, women affected by these images say that they find them degrading, but in many parts of the world, creating them is not actually illegal, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are different enforcement regimes and different legal regimes. Particularly when it comes to minors, that's where you get much more stringent illegality. But look, there are still laws, there are still civil suits that can be brought here. And, even in the United States, it hasn't gotten maybe quite as much attention of late, but actually the initiative that was led by Melania Trump to pass what's been called the Take It Down Act, which did pass last year, precisely deals with this issue of non-consensual sexual imagery. And it actually requires platforms to address and remove the content within 48 hours. Now, the time frame by which this is required is 1 year from the date of the enactment of the law. That hasn't happened yet since it was just passed this last year. But these are legal regimes that are, I think, being taken seriously by legislators and regulators, whether they are existing federal crimes when it comes to minors, or new laws that are being put on the books, not just in the U.S. but globally when it comes to AI and how easy it is to create this unfortunate content.
Who is targeted by these abusive AI-generated deepfakes? I mean, is everyone at risk, or is this primarily a gendered problem? I mean, is this primarily a problem for women?
It's very gendered. Yes, I think the data is very clear on that. And one particular group that I would also call out as I think particularly at risk when it comes to our democracies too, is women in public office and women in public life. These are the women that are being put into these chat prompts to create these grotesque images, and I think it can be a real deterrent to women who seek office and who enter the public spotlight without consenting, obviously, to these fake graphical images being put on them. And so I think, yeah, there is absolutely a gendered component to this, and it's worth a bigger think on what it means for who runs for office and who is in the public eye.
If we look at X and compare it to what it was, let's say 10 years ago when it was Twitter, I mean, it's a completely different platform now, and it is the go-to platform for many adult entertainers, if you will. And when you know that, should we be that surprised that these sexualized deep fakes are taking place on X? I mean, taking children out of the equation here, of course. But, I mean, isn't this the place where we perhaps should expect it to arise?
Yes, in some sense, of course. And on one dimension, look, X does not ban pornographic
Right.
images as part of its terms of service. And I think that it's tempting to see this movement, if you will, this surge in content over the last week, especially, as also part of a marketing attempt from adult entertainers. They actually have created their own images using AI in a consensual way. But where it's really gone off the rails is when people are depicted in these images that it's not clear that they are completely fake when they haven't consented to it. And that's why also I think there's a role for technical solutions too. We need to be better at authenticating when content is generated by AI and when it isn't. And part of that is pre-authentication, specifying when an image actually has been taken by a camera up front. So we know what's real and what's fake. So I think there's a lot we can do. It's not surprising that I think we're seeing X be some of the site of this. And I hope it's a wake-up call around the world and also in the United States to really take this a little more seriously.
Well, how do you think lawmakers should respond? I mean, what can be done to stop sexually abusive deepfake images being generated and circulated? And are we moving towards a world where your identity will have to be verified before you can get onto any platform? I mean, is that where we're headed?
I don't know that that's really where we're headed. I think there are, it's tempting to see that when to think that might be something we absolutely want, particularly in democratic societies. But it's important to remember that social media around the world is used by people in repressive regimes, posting with anonymity, and that's actually an important facet of this too. Where I do think we need to move is towards the images themselves being much clearer. Technologies like content authenticity technology and provenance information can actually provide transparency and put the information in the hands of the consumer, so we can better tell what's real from what's not. And look, I think this recent spate of content already is prompting investigations into XAI and Grok for how this spread is happening. But ultimately, I think we need not just better guardrails, but there need to be some sticks involved. When the Take It Down Act comes into effect in the United States and actually requires this content to be removed within 48 hours, there are going to need to be consequences for if it doesn't. If the platforms can get off scot-free
But
and face no consequences, they don't
you're
have the economic incentive
you're
to
talking you're
spend on
talking
that.
about holding the platforms accountable and not just the perpetrator here. Is that the future?
I think it's both. Yeah, it's both and. Platforms are already being held accountable in some of these laws, in the systems that they're required to set. up. These are generally newer laws coming onto the books. And I think there's a real question. Historically, at least in the United States, we've had this provision, Section 230, that has shielded platforms from
Yeah.
much of the accountability from what's on their platform. But we may start to see some cracks in that and some challenges to that if this content gets really rampant.
Yeah, that's definitely the word that you hear here in the European Union now all the time. Lindsay Gorman, Managing Director of the German Marshall Fund's Technology Program. Lindsay, it's always good to have you on the show. We appreciate your insights. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.